Hey everyone, today I want to talk about a new potential buff system that I think could greatly help Neverwinter and some of the issues that they're trying to fix. In the past, buffs have been tied to specific characters, which have made some characters more overpowered than others and kept them out of the meta, kept them unwanted. And so the idea is actually pretty simple. It's to basically, now that they're moving towards this holy trinity model, to create a party buff when the holy trinity is met. When you have a tank, a healer, and a DPS in the party, you would get a group-wide party buff that would benefit you in the dungeon. And you can tweak it in different ways to either make it necessary or just convenient benefit. But I think it would go a long way to make sure everyone is wanted in a dungeon. Because let's be honest here, there's a big concern that healers will not be needed in the future of Neverwinter because they were never needed in the past of Neverwinter, right? There have been healing builds, specific healing paths, and great healing in the game previously. It's just nobody ever invited them for those reasons because self-healing was always very, very strong. And so now they've taken action against that. They've removed lifesteal from the game, and they've painted it as this big boogeyman that was keeping healing builds out of the game, that was keeping healers away, making them unwanted, making them quote-unquote unplayable. Pure healing specs, not like hybrid healing buff specs. Again, buffs don't really exist now. But the reality is there's still decent self-healing in the game, even with the removal of lifesteal. It may not be of one, shoe-fits-all situation. You might need to cobble together a couple different sources of self-healing. But in my opinion, self-healing still exists in the game. I still think self-healing is too strong if this is the direction Cryptic wants to take. It needs to be toned down. And that's why I think this Holy Trinity buff system could work. If you want to see what the buff could look like, it could be as simple as, increasing the damage on monsters by 50%, and then when the Holy Trinity conditions are met, your party gets a 50% incoming damage reduction to counter that, and it could be that way. Or it could be something within the new counter stat system. This actually isn't all that crazy a stretch, because we've seen dungeon wide buffs before. I'm gonna go to Tiamat here. Let's see how we actually view it. But depending on how high the Horde of Tiamat is, right, there was a party wide buff, a dungeon wide buff. I guess Tiamat's this epic skirmish type thing, but here you go. Extra power, extra hit points, extra raw stats, crit power, cooldown reduction. There are different ways they can accomplish this. Again, they can make it either a necessity where you just give a ton of counter stats to the enemy monsters, and then enabling this Holy Trinity buff that's met when you have, a healer, a tank, and a DPS, would give you the stats you need to be able to penetrate those counter stats, and they would cancel out, basically guaranteeing that a healer always has a home in a party. Or you could just make it a convenience thing. You could even do it like with luck, right? So if you just made it, a loot drop table increase, if you said, okay, well, players that, meet the Holy Trinity conditions will have normal loot luck, and those who don't will have a loot penalty. People are going to make sure to invite, every single type of character. And again, it goes back to the reason why, they've painted buffs in a bad light and removed them in the game was because buffs were tied to a specific class, which made that class overpowered, and made other classes unwanted or, have to beg harder, or work harder. Now, in this Holy Trinity system, it's not, the buff isn't focused on a specific class, but on a larger type of class, the healer category, the DPS category, the tank category, and when all of them come together, then you get something good out of it. You might say, well, why is something like this necessary? And again, it goes back to, will healers be wanted? Because they haven't been. And like I said, healing builds have been around, but pure healers haven't been wanted. And now if you're changing numerous classes into pure healers, you've got to make sure that they are wanted in a dungeon. And I'm not convinced from what I've seen that it's at that point yet where they are wanted. The latest biggest nerf, I didn't originally intend to talk about it, but I might as well while we're all here, has been to debuff companions, right? So here's a con artist, which used to be a debuff companion. This used to be your debuff. It's no longer here. The final strike of Wicked Strike now has a chance to increase Sellsword's damage by 10%. This is basically where the debuff used to be, the 10% debuff. It's been replaced by an increase in damage for the companion, and you can see here it says the Sellsword's damage, even though it's on the con artist, because it's a copy paste from when they removed it and inserted the new one in. So debuff companions are gone now, and people are already scrambling towards, well, what's the next big new meta companion type? Augments are kind of a clear choice for a lot of people, especially tanks, because of the extra hit points and the way shielding mechanics work. But I'm personally thinking about going augment because I don't want to worry about my companion disappearing over and over again. I'm just tired. I'm fed up with it. I'm ready to switch to an augment. But a lot of people are looking at healing companions. There are still a decent selection of healing companions in the game that will heal you or party members and such. And people are looking at them. Prices have already gone up, so I'm not saying go out and buy them because the markets have already shifted on them. But people are seriously considering running healing companions along with, consumables, along with, different other equipment type proc-based effects. And self-healing is still in the game. And in my opinion, healers are always competing against self-healing. Not necessarily each other, but they're competing against self-healing to find a home in Neverwinter. And I think this new Holy Trinity party buff system could go a long way to making sure they always have a home. Like I said, it should be easy enough to code because they have put party-wide, dungeon-wide buffs in the game in Tiamat, right? That's a concept that already somewhat exists. So I'm not, I guess, particularly partial to this idea. I think it could be very helpful. If you don't think this is a good idea, I take no offense to this. But I think, it's fair. I think if you want to switch to the Holy Trinity system and make sure everyone has a role, has a place to play in the dungeon, and if you're removing all these buffs because, your stated case was, well, it was making certain classes too overpowered, it was scaling things too crazily, just make it a party-wide buff. One single buff that the whole party enjoys when everyone comes together. I think it's fair. I think it could help. I think it could do good things for the future of the game. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. Like I said, there's different ways they can do it, whether it be flat stats, whether it be just damage, dealt on monsters versus defense, reduction in damage. Even if it's just like luck-based, loot-based, pure playing on people's, not necessarily greed instinct, but want to gain treasure. There's a lot of ways it could go. This idea is just in its initial conception. With me personally, I came up with it the past couple of days, and I want to share it with all of you. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. So in between actually filming this video and getting it up, we actually did get a release date for the new mod, which is April 23rd, as you can see here from their official Twitter. They've also got a promotional video out if you want to go and watch it. But I thought I'd mention that, A, in case you haven't seen it yet today, and B, maybe this means it's too late to institute some of these changes I've been mentioning, or that I'd want to see. But I'm still gonna I decided I'd still put the video out, and because I think people find it interesting, and I think it could help again. So, anyways, I thought I'd add this on there in case anybody did miss the announcement.